almost feel like we need one of those things that slams down. It says episode 2, Inside TCU Athletics
In 3,
with Jeremiah.
2, 1.
Yeah, exactly. This is,
Yeah.
bam. We can just start that way, How you doing, man?
Good.
You ready to go?
Doing
You got a
good.
little time today? Can we talk a little bit about it? I got a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Yeah. The lot going on, obviously, and this is a fun time of year. You start to get that crossover with sports. Teams starting to have some success.
It feels like fall all of a sudden.
It does.
It's cooling down out there.
It does. This is when energy picks up too. Yep. Do you feel that way? Because I do.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got you're into the throes of it, so to speak, with all of your seasons. Yesterday I was here. Women's basketball was scrimmaging, men's scrimmage this weekend. So you've got more sports coming online. So no, definitely an exciting time. And like I said, we're approaching the second half of some of our fall sports seasons, and it's just a lot going on.
We're coming off the open week. There are no off weeks. We know that. We're coming off the open week. Football now getting ready to go to Utah, an old rivalry game. It's going to be fun. Late night in Salt Lake City. Let's start with football because I want to talk around a couple of different things that are going on in the world. But let's start with football. And 3-3 at this point. I know you. I know Coach Dykes. Not where we thought we would be. Give me kind of what you're feeling right now as far as where things are and what the future looks like as far as the season's concerned.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, being 3-3 is no fun.
No.
We expect to win here, and that's one of the reasons this place is so special. And so, Sonny doesn't need me to tell him that, and the players don't need me to tell him that. And so, but you are what you are. You are what your record is, and we're 3-3. And so, what are you going to do about it? And I would tell you what gives me hope and what I'm excited about is there's no one sitting around feeling sorry for themselves or pointing fingers. And you run the risk of that sometimes if you're coming off a tough loss. We've seen teams like that in the past that have struggled with that, of staying together. I don't see it with this group. I see a lot of leadership. I see a lot of maturity. Look, we've got good coaches. We've got good players. And sometimes it doesn't click like you'd want it to or as fast. And so, we've struggled with consistency. We've had some really good halves. We've had some good games, but we haven't done it. We haven't executed at a high level consistently. So it's been frustrating. Look, I'm as competitive as anyone, and losing's hard. And it's been the bye week probably came in some ways it comes at a great time. In some ways, you want to get out there and play immediately. And I'll tell you, if you're in the locker room, after the Houston game, the guys, it hurt. They knew they didn't play their best. Hats off to Houston. They did. They played great, and they were ready. And candidly, we weren't. So. We got to get better. To answer your question, the second part of what I want to see, we need to execute. The coach has got to coach better. The players got to play better. Staff needs to be better, and that means all of us.
Yeah.
It's not one guy or two guys. It's all of us. That's the thing about team sports, and football is the best example of a team sport because there's so many. You have so many players, but you have so many people involved. We all got to do a better job. We all got to hold each other accountable, and that's what I've seen. The attitude is really high right now. We had a good week of practice, and so I'm hopeful we can clean up some things and just execute it at a better level. Because if we do those things, you have a chance to win every game, and that's we know we've got the players and coaches to do that. So it's time to go do that.
We always laugh or joke at coaches and the phrases they use, and it's coach speak. We always talk. Everybody's.
Did I just give you some coach speak?
No. But I'm going to give you some coach speak that actually makes sense. As you dive into this season and what's left, you hear people, "Oh, football's a game of inches." You know what, Jeremiah? You look at just the turnovers by TCU, and it's a game of inches.
Yeah.
I mean, literally a game of inches. If a ball's not 2 inches high here, or you know what I'm saying, and if you take some of those turnovers away, it's a totally different season. And it's not just TCU. You can say the same thing about Kansas is saying the same thing. They had high hopes this year. They're turning the ball over. It's little things like that make a big difference.
It's little things like that, and I think this is against the backdrop of there's never been a more pressure to win than right now. And why do I say that? Well, if you think about, you hear, we're talking about the House case settlement, and you think about conference realignment, you think about, there's this in the news last week was about the SEC and the Big Ten, and now the college football playoff. people want to win, and the emphasis is to win right now. And so it's 3-3 sometimes feels like 0-6.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We this is what you sign up for, and I understand that. I acknowledge that. I understand our fans want to win. Our team wants to win, and so you don't sign up for wins. You compete for wins.
Yes.
And I think, like to your point, it does come down to the small things. And so, to your point, if we can make a few more plays, we'll be right where we want to be.
I was talking to an old high school coach this week, and he was asking me about TCU being 3-3, and I said, and he was asking, hey, what are you seeing? And I kind of told him a couple of things, and he said, you know what 3-3 means, Brian? I said, what? He said, that means you can finish 9-3. And I said, that's a good attitude. I like that. You can finish 9-3.
I would say this. I would say there's something about just in life, but especially in sports, about being positive.
Yeah.
And selling that and being positive around your players, around your staff and your team. I think that's really important. When things are going great, but also when they're not. And so I like that mentality.
Yeah, you can be 9-3. But that's, Sonny's good at that. Mm-hmm. Sonny's good at being positive. Jamie Dixon's really good at being positive too. Always finding the positive with his guys.
Well, good leaders, I think typically are.
Yeah.
Right. And good leaders, rather than when things aren't going well, rather than finding someone to point blame at, they start with themselves. They do an assessment. They figure out where are the places you can get better. How can we hold each other accountable to do that? And then you put a positive plan in motion, right? So, that's what I'm seeing. And so, but I think, I'm transitioning here a little bit. You see, so we'll talk about soccer and volleyball. I was just talking with someone offline about just both are having great seasons. And I was talking to Eric Bell yesterday after the Arizona State game, and we won 5-1. Very hot day. We were up 5-0 in the first half. I saw him on the pitch, so to speak, after the game. And I said, hey, congratulations, great win. And he had this great kind of attitude about it, which is one game at a time.
Yes.
One game at a time. This is a great win. I'm going to enjoy this for about an hour, and then it's on to the next one. And so just that he and Jason, one of the things, volleyball beat BYU last weekend. 11th time in 10 years they've lost. BYU's lost at home. That is that is the equivalent of men's basketball winning at Kansas,
right?
Because they've got such a great home court advantage. And the thing is our volleyball team was all sick,
and won,
and it still won.
Yeah.
So I'm gushing on them for a moment, but the thought was it would have been easy to pack it in.
Sure.
And the thought about positive leadership, I think, really resonates there as well.
You look at the Big 12 in football overall. I mean, nobody at the beginning of the year would have thought Iowa State and BYU would be the two teams in the driver's seat.
No, how about that?
Yeah, but there's so much left to be played. I mean, we're so early in the season. That goes back to what you're saying. I mean, it feels like you're getting toward the wire. You're not.
A lot of football left.
Yeah.
You got to play the long game. You got to take one game at a time, though. You can't. Let's not focus on being 6-0 our next game. Let's focus on being 1-0, right? And then coming back for homecoming. So, but excited to get out to Utah.
Have you been there?
It's been years and not at TCU.
Yeah.
My first year here was 2011, and Utah had already left the league. And so I had been there, but it's been, I was a young man back in my Washington State days. So excited to get out there.
It's a great stadium.
Yeah, it'll be a little cooler. There'll be some good fall weather, a late game. It'll be a late return back to campus, but I think our guys are fired up, and what a tremendous opportunity for us.
Yeah, it is a renewal of an old rivalry, too, as we mentioned, played over the years.
Yeah.
Back in Mountain. Those were some epic games. I know you've heard about people who told you.
I watched them.
Yeah, you did.
I watched them when I was considering coming here. I remember watching the last two times that TCU played Utah.
Yeah.
So, and back in those Mountain West days, which seems like it was forever, we've been in the Big 12 significantly longer than we were in the Mountain West.
I know,
Think about that. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
But, most years it came down to TCU or BYU as the conference champion.
Yep, it was a lot of fun. And then Boise late.
TCU or Utah.
Yeah. But BYU was in there too.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the mix, and then Boise
TCU,
later
BYU,
on.
Utah, and then Boise last year,
Let's transition if we could. I do want to talk more about what's going on campus, but I need to get some clarification on some things from, if you don't mind, like the house settlement. Because we understand that's, it's sort of starting to peel away now. We know what it's looking like. Are there any changes, anything that you didn't anticipate?
Well, not yet. The judge granted preliminary approval, and so for anyone who tuned into the first episode, our first podcast, we talked about, what is this lawsuit? What does it entail?
Yeah.
It's the backward-looking damages, but really the two big things on campus for us are scholarship limits going away, roster limits coming into effect. The biggest example I can give you that is football goes to 105 as a total limit, whereas now I think there's about 130 kids walking around out there. So that'll be a big difference. There's 25 young men won't be here next year. That's just one example. Every sport has a new instituted roster limit, and you can scholarship up to that roster limit. And then, but the most significant thing, just from a cost impact, is revenue sharing. And of course, we've talked about that. So, how those things are coming into play. Every single school has a different strategy, but some of that has to do with your Title IX approach, right? Because Title IX is not going away, and you need to make sure that you're compliant with Title IX as a federal law. I reminded someone else the other day that Title IX is not something we're striving to do. It's not a policy or an internal policy. It is a federal law, and so it's important that we comply with that. We have complied with that, and we will continue to do that. But in this new world, it looks different.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to do that. You're trying to determine how you distribute the revenue. What scholarships, which sports are getting which scholarships. Oh, and by the way, you're trying to do all that, and you've got the first signing period here in about 5 weeks.
Right.
So from a timeline perspective, we've been granted preliminary approval, so we can start kind of directionally planning for those things I mentioned. There are a number of sub-issues within those underneath what I just mentioned that we are operationalizing here on campus. But then you have until we won't have final approval at the earliest until April. There's been a hearing set for April of 2025. So while we can plan for this to take effect July of 2025, we're not there yet. And so a lot of things can happen between now and then. This preliminary approval was huge. It was the next big step. It was a significant step for us. And so we're not going back on our plans. We're moving forward. But there's a lot to do. I think I made the analogy that you're basically overhauling your entire business model. And we are. It's a significant cost impact, but it's just the way in which we operate. I think we all need to be comfortable with. There's a lot of things, and I talk to fans almost every day about this, is, we all want, all of our sports to continue having great trajectories for success. We want them to, we don't want to let go of anything. And I would just tell you that our world has changed so much. We have got to be comfortable with a significant amount of change throughout college athletics. It doesn't mean we can't be competitive. We are going to be competitive. We have huge plans for TCU to be competitive. But our sports are going to look different. They're going to look different. How they're funded, where the scholarships are. Some of that's going to it's going to be different. There's going to be some growing pains because back to this house case settlement. This is. Someone said to me the other day, "What are we solving for?" And I said, "These lawsuits were solving for us not going out of business and not going bankrupt, because that was what we were all up against. We settled these lawsuits not to go out of business." So we're responding to those. It's not necessarily how I would draw up our business plan, but this is the response to that.
Are you confident that this settlement and what comes out of it is a long-term fix, or are we back at the table again in 7 or 8 years remaking the business model?
Good question. So part of the settlement is the durability of it.
Yeah.
And how long, in other words, how long will all these rules be enforceable or in effect, if you will? And so you could probably plan on about 10 years. But you also can't, one thing this lawsuit is not contemplating is employment. And I would tell you, Brian, if you and I were sitting here 3 years ago, and I would tell you that we would be sharing revenue of up to $21 million with our student athletes, you would probably think this podcast was in 2034.
At least, yeah.
Right? I mean, way out there in the future,
Yeah.
It's probably, different employees and different athletics directors and different coaches who have to deal with that, right? It's 2 years later. 3 years later.
It's fast track.
It's fast track. And so if you think about all the employment cases that are out there, the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB cases, this is barreling down on us. And that's one thing these lawsuits don't contemplate is employment status. Now, employment status has a little bit of a bad connotation to it, or negative connotation to it, because I think people think of employment status as them being full-time employees or FTEs, full-time, like we've got 250 full-time employees. We're adding 500 employees.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe we also have student employees. And we have this quasi-employment status.
Yeah,
and it's
almost like what is it? Work study.
Work study. So it probably looks more like that.
Yeah.
Right. But it is, and there are some trade-offs with it that I think are really positive. So that's for another conversation. Probably would be great to have it as we learn a little bit more. But I think when you ask, what does this look like long term? It doesn't solve for that, and that's a big one. And so that could change. That could be another significant impact on our business that could change next year, the following year. So we are loosely planning for that as well, because it's coming, and it's coming not 10 years from now, but much like RevShare, probably in the near future.
I'm glad you have
my opinion.
I'm glad you have a law degree.
Well,
I'll be honest with you. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you have a law degree, and you have the experiences that you had on the agency side too. Because if
they've proven to be helpful.
Yeah,
at
not,
least,
man.
And not that I have the answers or solutions, but at least I think we're all, as a university, I think we're thinking about, we know the questions, right? And while there are not any real hard answers out there, I think as long as you know what the issues are, and you know what the questions are, and you have people that are like-minded that can help solve for those, you got a chance. And we do have that here, and we've got great leadership that's supportive of that, because some of these solutions, potential solutions, are thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
And so we need to be looking at all of it.
Well, as this house settlement was coming down last week, I guess it was, I thought the timing was interesting. You had the SEC and the Big Ten getting together. And then you had these rumors about these super leagues, that had private equity behind them, didn't they?
Yeah.
A couple of them did.
Some of them. It's hard to keep track of it. Once there was one proposal, and now there's 4 or 5 plans out there. And guess what? There's probably 3 or 4 more people that are drawing up a plan as we speak. So
I got I have emails from 2 different people who have a plan. And they're like fans. One of them actually makes a lot of sense.
Maybe makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, do they get vetted? Do they matter? Do they? I mean, where does that fall?
Well, you have a number of competing interests, and so just on the SEC and the Big Ten for a moment, there was kind of some hard pushback, from one or both of the commissioners that were saying, "Hey, look, our model works, and so we don't need private equity." And so maybe they're not wrong from where they sit, but maybe if you sit in a different chair in a different league and you find yourself in the group of 5. Or, even in the Big 12, maybe you say, well, that's not a great long-term solution. So I guess it depends on your perspective. I mean, I think, look, college football is important. And let's just talk about football for a second.
Yeah.
College football is important. It's important to this country.
Yep.
Right? College football is a huge part of American culture. And so I think we all want to see a real national championship. I think we all want to see some competitive equity. And we understand there's going to be schools that have a natural built-in advantage. That goes back to the dawn of time, the dawn of man, right?
Yes.
That's not going to change. And so to think that, we're going to have this perfectly level playing field, that's not realistic. There are just some brands and some institutions where that's just, you just have an advantage there, and that's okay. We know that. We have an advantage. Maybe not to the extent that some other schools do, but we've competed with those schools. We've beaten the Texases, the Michigans of the world. So, I don't get too worried about that, but I worried about the sustainability of our sport, of college football long term. And back to having a national championship, so much of that revolves around your media partners and what that looks like. And right now, we know the Big Ten is a Fox deal, and the SEC is an ESPN deal. And so, you look long term at what those deals look like. Those are obviously longer term television deals. We know we have both of them. The Big 12, in some degree, has the best of both worlds. We have a deal with ESPN and Fox. But all of these super leagues will require media partners or additional media partners. And so, if you're in ESPN and Fox for a moment, you sit there and you go, "Well, this is working fine."
Exactly. We're making money on this
for us,
yeah.
Right? And so I guess I say all that to say is just if you look at any one of these plans, these Super League plans, if you just put it down on this table right here, you said, oh yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I like these divisions. I like this regional scheduling, whatever it is that you might like about it. But again, the plan works right now for some of those constituents. So it's a matter of all coming together for the best in the best interests of the game long term. And that means that some will have to give. There'll be some give and take. And so that's going to be the great challenge of all this, of finding any long-term solution that captures all of this will be that. And so I don't see it coming next year.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's something, these television deals are multiple years out. There would have to be some kind of grand reset, if you will. I don't know what that looks like, but very, very complex. It's fun to dream a little bit about what that could look like, but I don't think any of those are imminent.
When I talk to other folks around the country at lower division schools, or I shouldn't say that, even Division I places that don't play football, or maybe a group of 5 football, there is some kind of this undercurrent that we may wake up one day and many of those schools say, I'm not doing that. We're not going to be part of this. It's not in our mission from an academic perspective. And you see even some Division I basketball playing schools saying, we're going to the D3 model. Do you see that? Do you see that we wake up one day and all of a sudden there aren't? How many basketball playing schools are there? 330?
365,
60,
I think it was.
yeah.
Ironically, that's an easy number to remember. I think it was 365.
Yeah, did we wake up one day and all of a sudden it's 240?
It's a great question. I think for most schools, for a lot of schools, and we would be considered one of these, athletics is a gateway into the university, right? It's got a platform and a visibility component that attracts a lot of people to want to come visit the school, apply to the school, attend the school, give to the school. And that model's worked. That model's worked especially well for us at TCU. And the question then becomes, but it's expensive. And the cost of doing business continues to rise. And so the question then becomes, can you keep up with the cost?
Sure.
And for some schools, to your point, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. And so rather than chasing that dragon, so to speak, some schools will make the decision to find that value, or to find other ways to attract people to the university besides athletics.
Right.
Whether it's football, in your case, what you just mentioned is basketball.
Yeah.
I do think before those decisions are made on those sports, I think you're more likely to see the impact at the Olympic level, the Olympic sports level. So it's coming. It's just not sustainable to carry the sports, to have the cost. I mean, our cost of business goes up significantly every year. And we talked about adding the revenue sharing component, that's $21 million to our budget next year. But that doesn't include the compensation, inflation, the cost of meals, the cost of travel. One of the things with this new Big 12, for example, and we don't, I'm not saying woe is us, because we do find ourselves in a great place with DFW, whether it's access to the airport or centrally located. But pretend you're West Virginia or Central Florida, or even the Arizona, Utah schools. You find yourselves, on the outside of the league, so to speak, geographically. Your travel costs are going to go up, and so that's why the emphasis on regional scheduling and being very careful about how we, so we don't see too much cost added every single year, in addition to what we already know we have to spend.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough because most of our revenues to some degree are fixed. Take the Big 12 distribution for a moment. The variance there year over year is not, you're not going to have a year where we make 20% more.
Right.
Right. Those are baked into our long-term television deals. And so, you give credit to the commissioner for looking at new revenue models, whether it's naming rights or other things, to try to find ways to make up that gap. So it's a very interesting time right now in college athletics. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that this model is sustainable and that everything's going to be okay. And I generally believe we'll find a way. I think we are. I'll use the former commissioner, Bob Bowlesby, always used to say, we are a very resilient business, and we have hung in there, and we've battled the test of time. I think we will.
Yeah.
It may look a lot different though.
So what you're telling me is everything's written in Jell-O at this point. It can move around.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. I got
Yes.
it. I was thinking about when you think about the portal, and you think about NIL and all the different changes, and I was getting a little reflective the other day at the Letterman's Hall of Fame, the Block T Association Hall of Fame.
What a fun night.
It is. It's always a good night. What does that look like in 10 years?
Another great question, Brian. You're on top. You're
I was just
considering we didn't come in with any questions.
I know,
You're
I know.
nailing them. I'm sitting there the other night, and it was a beautiful night. And I always love that night because you get to see young men and young women, in some case coaches too, and Tup Bartson, who we know played here and coached here. They see the other side of it.
Yes.
They're up there, and take Marcus Cannon for a second, or Tom Hoagie. He was a friend who was sitting. Had kind of our backs together. We were at tables that were adjacent to each other. I pictured both of their times, in particular here as student athletes, and now they're up there on the stage, and now they're, because they both graduated around the same time, and now we're talking about revenue sharing and complete. They didn't play in the Big 12.
No.
They were in the Mountain West, and how much has changed for them, even in 10, 11, 12 years, and just how much it will change. They didn't transfer. I mean, the kids transferred. Back then you transferred. You sat out a year. It was called the year in residency, and you made a commitment to a school, and a school made a commitment to you, and that was your 4 years or 5 years. And nowadays that's completely different. You have to re-recruit your kids every year. But to some degree, they have to re-recruit you, right?
True.
Because now with smaller roster sizes, I hate to just be this direct, but the kids have to produce, or they have to show that they are going to be capable of producing, because those roster spots are so valuable. That coaches are not going to be in the business to just waste them and just to have kids around who aren't going to be able to be successful here academically and contribute athletically. And so, I don't know. To answer your question, I'm looking at a picture of Desmond Bain the other day, and also Emmanuel Miller. And Emmanuel was transferred from Texas A&M here, and Desmond Bain, of course, was a 4-year kid. I don't know how many more of those we'll see. Hopefully a lot, but I just don't know. And so, fast forward? What is the Hall of Fame? How many? If you transfer 2 or 3 times during your time, do you go in 3 Hall of Fames?
3 Hall of Fames. Yeah.
Do you have to do 3 of those? Yeah, I don't know.
Who
claims you?
Yeah, what hit home for me was Helena Sverrisdottir from Finland, Iceland. Yeah,
Iceland.
Reykjavik, Iceland, right? From Iceland. Said she'd been back a couple of times. But she was talking about when she came back with her family, and they drove into town, and she saw the skyline. And if you remember, she got emotional, and she said, "This is my home." And I thought, are kids going to feel that way again? Are we going to have that, experience that she experienced? And I'm not just talking about international kids, but a kid from Norfolk, Virginia, who comes to TCU for 4 years.
I think I can't speak for every school, but I can speak for us, and I think the answer is yes, because we do have a sense of community here. We have a great community in Fort Worth, and I do think this place, TCU, is special in that the on-campus, in-person experience is unique, and so that gives you a chance to preserve that. I think kids want to be here, and we've found that this is a great place to recruit for our coaches who have been to other schools. Say they love being here because it's easier to recruit. Kids generally want to be in Fort Worth, they want to be in Texas, they want to be here. We pour into our students here on campus, and that starts with, what the president, the chancellor do, and what in the tone they set. And so, forget revenue sharing, forget facilities improvements. Just the student experience here is special, and I think at the end of the day, they are students, and I think they want to be places where they feel accepted, they feel a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a place they like, and I think TCU is a place that offers that. So that gives you a chance.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to predict. Just going back to Desmond Bain, finding that 4-year kid, But I do think I will remain positive and optimistic that it'll be less chaotic than we think. And hopefully, this house settlement does give some stability that allows us from which to play from.
Can I hit you with a big topic, and you can tell me if we have time to do it today?
Yeah.
Because it's something.
What we just covered wasn't.
No, this is bigger.
Wasn't big enough.
This is bigger. Seriously, this is bigger. I've been reading up on it this week because I think it came out the 10th of October. There's a previous story about it, but then the NCAA sanctioned this widespread study on harassment of student athletes and officials and coaches via social media. Did you see this?
I did, yes, and to be fair, I've seen it. I haven't done a deep dive into it. Yeah,
because as I studied it, I mean, Jeremiah, this is some of it is related to gambling.
Yeah.
But then there's others, just the society that we in, and it's a big topic. Well, I think we ought to talk about it.
Yeah, I would tell you this. That's a great place to pause. You know, I mentioned earlier just the emphasis to win has never been greater, because it just the world is right now we're in a fight. It's an election year. You know about all these wars going on all over the world. Conference realignment. You know, no one wants to get left behind. The emphasis, the importance of winning, the pressure to win is immense. And then you layer on top of that the proliferation of gambling. And the numbers are off the charts of how many people are gambling on sports and college football specifically right now, TCU football. And you see after a tough loss where, I see the chatter and the negative chatter, and, you know, I see all that. That's not new, but it's a different level now. It's a different level, and a lot of that is because of the gambling. Because it's one thing if your alma mater lost the game and you feel disappointed or you feel sad or you feel upset, or I understand. I completely understand those emotions. It's another thing if you've lost money.
Yeah.
On top of that.
Yeah.
And maybe a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is. It's the trade-off is, and the Commissioner Yormark and I spoke about this. He actually came to the soccer game against West Virginia a week or so ago. The trade-off is, with gambling, more people are watching. And so that drives television media values, right? So that's a good thing, right? We've benefited from that. The trade-off is there's more people gambling. There are some people who have addictions, and there's some people that shouldn't be gambling. And so, again, another kind of wholesale change. I mean, there was, it wasn't long ago, gambling was just something you did in Las Vegas.
Yes, that was it.
At a sports book.
Yeah.
What's the over-under?
Right.
TCU's favored by 7. I'm going to take him to cover, whatever it is. It's a lot different now. And you talk about fantasy football, fantasy sports, prop betting, propositional betting. Do we pick up the first down?
Right.
Do they make the 43-yard field goal?
The coin toss.
I know, weird stuff.
Yes.
How many turnovers does a team have today? Whatever it is, those types of down propositional betting is a way to draw people in. And some people, what's funny? Some people don't realize they're betting, because it's almost like you're asking a question.
Right.
And that's how a lot of the kids in Iowa got in trouble on that betting scam. They didn't realize at the time they were betting. Really? Because they were just kind of going no turnover here, misses the field goal.
It's almost fantasy.
Yeah, the end of the first quarter spread.
Yeah.
You're just kind of going along it. You don't realize you're placing a bet for every kind of decision you're making, and that's kind of how they draw you in.
Scary.
So, it's a tactic that these gambling sites and these betting it's a tactic they use, but it's effective.
All right, I'm going to leave with this. And so I'm going to file that away.
Yeah, file that one away.
Yeah, because that's a big topic.
I want to list that.
Yeah, it was at the very. I purposely kept that one from you. All right, I need to know about your influence.
Uh-huh.
I mean, how much did you throw your weight around? Because I saw who's playing Schollmaier live.
Well,
and I see 2 Chainz.
2 Chainz.
And I thought, I wonder if JD had a role in this.
Well, credit to our marketing department and our basketball programs. They have found this is the 3rd year in a row with Ludacris, then Rick Ross last year, and then 2 Chainz this year. It'll be fun.
Exactly.
It'll be a fun event. And
I just figure they're on your Spotify.
Oh yeah.
And they're just like, who's he listen? Oh, let's go get that.
I'm very familiar, and I know quite a bit about 2 Chainz. It wouldn't be the top of my spot, right. my list, but it probably is.
It's in there
for these and for our teams, and that's what this event is about,
sure.
and our students too. It'll be a fun night. Schollmaier live. What a fun thing to remember. We actually had Shaquille O'Neal booked years ago, and unfortunately his sister literally passed away a night or 2 before the event, and he had to cancel. And then I think COVID hit. So Julie Austin, who runs our marketing efforts, who does a fantastic job, she and Rory Rutledge, this is really their baby.
Okay.
And so we had to pause on it a year. And the year we wanted to do it, we unfortunately had that tragedy I mentioned, and so this is year 3, and it'll be the best yet.
So you're telling me you didn't influence it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just making sure that. All right, we got to wrap it up. I hate this, man, because we could go on forever.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
I know.
Yeah.
Bottom line is this.
And by the way, thank you for being on brand.
You like this Flying Tea?
Flying Tea Club.
Yeah. If Denton doesn't buy me lunch for this, right?
He's hopefully he's watching, but still, NIL as it currently exists,
not going anywhere.
Is not going anywhere, at least for this year, and so very important. Little plug for the Flying Tea Club. Yeah. Please sign up today. It's makes a huge difference. But so I appreciate you rocking the repping the brand.
I like it. Saturday night, 8:30.
Yep. Can't wait.
Salt Lake City, 8:30 local time, 9:30 Central.
9:30 Central, just like the Stanford game.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, thanks, JD.
All right, anytime.
That's this week.